I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Look, if you have been to a Fringe theater show, then you know that it just hits a little bit different than a more polished production. That's the whole point, right? Because when it's good, you can sort of sit in the audience and watch a Fringe production and go, this is going somewhere. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to get bigger than this because this might be the next big thing. Aisling Murphy just finished scouting out all the good stuff at this year's Toronto Fringe Festival. She's here to talk about the shows that have the potential to become even bigger. Aisling, what's good, homie? How's it going?
So good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. Nice to see you. Listen, I'm going to start by being like, okay, let's talk about Fringe in general. What do you love about going to Fringe as a concept?
Yeah, I mean, as you kind of said, you're sort of getting in on the ground level of theater as it gets made. So what's so fun is when you see something and then it does get bigger, and then you can be that person at a party who's like, yeah, I saw that at Fringe. I'm actually better than you. But in a more serious way, it's a really low barrier way for people to make theater, for people to see theater. It's cheap to make, cheap-ish to get tickets for.
Yeah.
It's a party where everyone's allowed. It's great.
The only analogy I can think of is there's this video that goes around every once in a while of like MGMT, and they're doing Kids, but they're like doing the song that became like a gigantic hit, but they're doing it
Totally.
in front of like a crowd of 10 people who are like, kind of like swaying side to side. Like, do you guys know what you're witnessing? This song is going to become a song that everyone knows, but they don't know it yet. They don't really necessarily know it yet. And you can kind of go like, this is gonna get a little bit bigger. In a normal year, I think like the what are the expectations when you go in to see a Fringe show? What are the normal expectations of a Fringe show?
Yeah, I mean, when I go in to review like a Fringe festival, I sort of expect that there'll be one or two that I'm talking about for more than a week. Like there'll be one or two where, I'll sort of keep my eye on them and say, this was really good at Fringe. I wonder how and when this is going to show up again in a more polished capacity.
Right.
When if you step into an individual show, you're maybe not expecting great tech. A lot of times there's going to be lighting issues, sound issues. It's probably going to be pretty rough around the edges. But what you're more there to kind of, take the temperature on is what's the material like here? Is this a really unique artistic voice? And more often than not, the answer is yes.
So we're talking today. The reason we're talking is because you went to the Toronto Fringe Festival, and what you saw exceeded your expectations in a bunch of ways. Let's talk about some of the shows that you did think have a lot of potential. Let's start with this one. Listen, I don't even know what that is, and I hear that and go, "Oh, I'm in." It sounds cooked. It sounds like it's fully sort of ready. So that's Almost Ever After. Tell me about why you think that show has a lot of potential.
Totally. I mean, as you just heard, is that not the most catchy thing you've heard in the past month? Like that'll be stuck in my head probably until the end of time. So Almost Ever After, it's spoofing movies like Love Actually. So you have all these like interconnected plots that at first glance, they don't necessarily seem to be super related to each other. You have a meet cute. There's an unplanned pregnancy. There's a few relationships that are on the rocks. And as the show develops, but of course, these paths cross and intersect in interesting and very sweet ways.
Yeah.
It's a little saccharine, but that's like kind of the point. It's super fun, and it's definitely winking at you as it does that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I mean, that score is it's catchy. You've got some really fun like pop references. There's some Beatles sounds going on there, which I think is really fun.
Nice.
It's, at this stage, I think it's maybe a little repetitive. There's definitely room to further finesse Almost Ever After, but the cast at this year's Fringe was ridiculous. You have Julia Pulo, who was the original Anne Boleyn in the Canadian production of Six. She's a pretty... Yeah, she's a pretty heavy hitter, and she was amazing in this. Kelly Holliff as well. So I don't know. There's room for it to grow, but I was pretty impressed.
I gotta say, first of all, when you describe a show as a little saccharine, that does not talk me out of it. That talks me into it. Totally. That's me. I just as a person. You saw Control Alt Delete. That was another show that you want to talk about. What is it about that show that caught your attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a writer. I love words. I love like a goofy. shout out words. A goofy pun about a grammatical concept just gets me where I need to be. In Control Alt Delete, so it's the alphabet. The characters are all letters of the alphabet, and they're
what?
They're at risk of being downsized. One of them's about to get laid off. It's all very corporate, very 2025 economic hell. It's fine. But so these letters are at risk of getting laid off, and so they're arguing amongst themselves, like, who should go, because like the letter F, his job could be accomplished by P and H working together. So like from a corporate perspective, do we even need the letter F? Like, it's so ridiculous. It's such like classic Fringe material. And again, it's really well done. There would be a way for that to go so off the rails so quickly, but it's actually really thoughtful and sharp, and it doesn't wear out the bit too much, I don't think.
Because I was gonna say, like, it sounds like a bit where you say that in the first sentence and go like, oh yeah, that's funny to think about. But the idea of developing that into a full show, that's where you kind of go like, oh, this better hold together. But it did hold together for you.
It did. I mean, I left that feeling like it was almost a mix of Six again, and then the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, where you have these like, it's so goofy that it just works. I know it sounds crazy, but it does. I was, again, just really impressed.
I'm sold. Okay, there's another clip. I want to play this. This is from Iris Says Goodbye, and we've got a clip from one of the rehearsals. What's special about this show? Because I hear that and I go, I'm a little sad just hearing that. But Aisling, Iris Says Goodbye. Tell me about it.
This one hit me like a train when I saw it. Something about a Fringe is you're normally in the middle of summer. You're seeing so many shows back to back to back. You're hot. You're sweaty. You're like sore probably. So when I went to go see Iris Says Goodbye, I wasn't necessarily expecting much. And then you hear this score. So we just heard the clip where, it's almost, there's a little bit of Stephen Sondheim in there. There's some Janine Tesori in there. It's a really richly conceived score, but then the story as well is kind of heartbreaking. In Iris Says Goodbye, writers Margot Grieve and Ben Kopp imagine purgatory as a giant endless airport. We've all been there. That's, it's the most liminal of liminal spaces.
Yeah.
And when we meet Iris, she's given the chance to choose what her next life will be between a series of random choices that the audience winds up actually making for her. So you pair this like very melancholy score with this very tactile symbol of the fact that life as we know it is pretty random, and fate has a really interesting way of making us do things we don't expect. And those two things together, I think there's room to fine tune the show, the randomized nature of it. I wound up seeing the show 3 times, and the randomized part of the show maybe only sometimes worked for me, but there is such a gem there to keep polishing. And I really hope that I think that's going to be my show where in like 5 years, I can be that person who's like, yeah, I saw it at Fringe, and that's just great.
But also, and the notion of like a show hitting you like a train, like that's what you go to theater for. Like that's like
totally.
like you want to sort of find the thing that's going to go like, oh, this really connected with me in ways that maybe I didn't expect. The idea that you go to the Fringe Festival, the Toronto Fringe Festival this year, and then you end up coming away with a bunch of shows that go, okay, there's something here. There's something kind of bubbling up. What does it tell you that there's so many great shows kind of bubbling up just under right now?
Totally. I mean, when I went to Fringe this year, I was sort of blown away by the fact that nearly everything I saw was sold out. And I wasn't cherry picking stuff based on word of mouth. Like I really did just go randomly, which I think is the way to plan how you see a Fringe. Nearly everything was sold out, which in the moment I thought was pretty impressive. And then at the end of the festival, it turned out that no, they actually sold 25% more tickets this year than last year. So I think that change of pace was a real thing. That's not just something that my brain was making up.
Yeah.
And also, theater tickets at more established theater companies are by necessity in a lot of ways, but they're really expensive. So I think we're in a moment, both culturally and economically, where a festival where a ticket to see a show that might be pretty good being $18, I think that's a pretty good gamble. And also then if the show that you wind up choosing isn't very good, $18 isn't nothing, but that's less than say, seeing something at a far bigger like touring musical or something like that, where you have to spend a lot to invest and see if you really like it.
The thing about what you just said, though, is that it crashes into a couple of things we've talked about in the show. Number one is not that long ago, actually, we're talking about the ways that it takes a long time for a show to be workshopped in this country before it actually makes it onto a stage. And then number two, and maybe a bigger thing, is that like arts funding in general in this country is kind of in a crisis. So when you see these shows, what do you think is going to take for them to get to the next level, the next production stage, the place where an established theater company says, you know what, sit it down here for a few weeks and let's see if we can make something happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that point, you need the companies and the folks with some artistic power and budget and resources in this country to want to invest in these shows. That's a big undertaking. You know, often that will look like money and you know paying artists to keep developing their work. Often that'll look like needing rehearsal space and workshop space and hiring orchestrators, co-arrangers, you know, sort of the unsexy parts of making a new musical. But also it's really important work, and that's how we get shows like Kim's Convenience, Life After, The Drowsy Chaperone, The Kink in My Hair. These are all shows that started at the Fringe, and then through really intentional effort and investment and faith in what Canadian theater can be when it starts at a grassroots level, they became the sort of cultural phenomena that they are now.
So it takes a bit of investment. It takes a bit of willingness to say, you know what, this is worth taking the risk. Aisling, I appreciate your time and your energy, friend. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks so much.
Of course, anytime. Aisling Murphy covers theater for the Globe and Mail. There's still a bunch of Fringe theater to be discovered this summer. The Saskatoon Fringe Festival starts on the 31st. Calgary starts on August 1st, and North Bay Fringe Festival starts on August 6th. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We'll see you tomorrow.